Apathy is a lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern.
Eh.
I don't care. Meh. It doesn't mean that you can't have your own opinions on things about things you do and do not care about as far as like interests and stuff. But because one of the great things about being a human being is our diverse set of interests and our ability to choose those things. However, realize that not caring about something means that something's left derelict and somebody picks up that and takes initiative. And then we only really start to care when it starts to affect us. And this is particularly dangerous when you have apathy toward another person. So what are you apathetic to? We all have places in our life. And what effectively lifts you out of apathy into empathy? So ponder this and come up with some examples of your own as we launch out into the loop and discuss why apathy is dangerous on Curiosity Continuum.
Thank you for joining us today on Curiosity Continuum. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Curiosity Continuum is a movement started by two lifelong friends, Brian and myself. We have a mission to spark your imagination, cultivate your mind, and understand diverse perspectives for practical application and the common good. We want you to start a meaningful conversation with those around you so we can all get better together.
And you can find us on the web at www.curiositycontinuum.com. All the socials and the channels are there to be able to link off and get to where you need to go. Please rate and listen to us, and please share, because sharing is caring, everybody. And with the way that we can,
I was going to say that. Sharing is caring, Brian.
Sharing is
it's
caring.
The more you know.
And if your mother didn't teach you to share, now's a great chance to do that. In actuality, we grow organically, so that's the best way to do it. Always want to be sure that somebody who can benefit from it, we're getting a chance just to share our thoughts with them. So thank you for helping us continue the work that we do. Sharing is caring, and if you don't care, that means you're apathetic. See how I transitioned there, Josh? That was a good one, right?
Yes, it's good.
Maybe not. Thank you for that token validation right there for what we did.
That's what I'm here for, Brian. I'm a good friend.
I'm glad you care, Josh. It's easy to care about something that we care about. And it sounds redundant, but it's actually not. It's my stuff, it's my family, it's my whatever it is. That's easy to care about. It's something that directly impacts us, or we receive some kind of validation that we can actually perceive in some way. Sometimes you move outside of that if you're getting more self-actualization, like I do this because it helps others. But it's still a loop back to you to going man, I'm doing the right thing, or I'm really being that person. But in the places where people aren't active or they aren't caring, those are areas of apathy. Now, again, to reinforce, it doesn't mean that you're not subject to having your own opinions or thoughts on something. But these are important areas to be aware of, because oftentimes this is where you can have something either like a deception or something subversive or something just surprise attack you because you didn't know to look at it because you weren't paying attention.
Right. And there's a lot of things like this. And like Brian said, we only really start caring once it starts affecting us. Like people in general, I think people really only want to change, and they have apathy towards a lot of things, but they only really want to change when we're on the precipice of something terrible. Like, for example, the environment or politics or education or, right now, we're all talking about, national debt and the United States and all this kind of stuff. And we're just it doesn't really affect us unless it does. Where if, somebody comes up to you and says, hey, because our national debt's so high, I'm not going to be able to loan you this money because we don't think, your government's going to be able to pay it back, so you can't. And all of a sudden, you have a big issue. You're like, oh, wow, I can't do something in my own life? And then you become, and you're like, okay, well, I better start caring about this. When in reality, you probably should have started caring a long time before it got to that point. But people in general are like that.
There's an example that I heard somebody give one time. They said, if you want to like defend your home, kind of be like the person to be able to do that. They said, if somebody breaks into your house and you run into the weight room and start lifting weights so you can get strong enough to fend that person off, like you have waited too long.
You are.
The bloom
is over.
The bloom is off the rose there. If you want to be able to have that, it's like you do, start beforehand. And, that was used like in a self-defense thing. But really, like, if you think about health things even too.
Right.
Like, I don't care what I eat, or I don't care if I do this or that, until you have a heart attack. Or until somebody had like a stroke and died. Or
even then, that's a tough one. Because you're like, oh, it's not me. It's not me. It's like, but it was, somebody that was like you. I actually had this happen last week. Not even like somebody I knew directly. Well, I knew them directly, but they had a heart attack and died. And it was just somebody I had in, casual conversations with in my work, in the course of my job. But still, it's kind of like, wow, that really hits you hard because, for me anyway, because I kind of knew that person. And that person was the only one in that group of people that remembered my name, so I was kind of bummed about that. But I was like, it's more like what were they doing different than me? And they really weren't probably doing much different. And so it was more like a thing like I was having apathy towards like maybe my own mortality, maybe in a way. And then I just kind of like saw that. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should start doing more.
Those things make us re-examine what we should care about. Something like a major life event.
Right.
I had this guy that I've known for years, super talented musician. I mean, like, can sing as singing can go. And, both of his parents died in their 50s, and because they were all, morbidly obese. And so, he was very heavy, and then he lost a lot of weight, and then he regained the weight, and now he's in the process of losing it again. And I know, like, I had concern for him because, he wasn't, it was like, there was a very clear path. Like, if you continue to make the same choices that your parents did when it comes to food and those things, then there's pretty clear evidence that this is very likely it's going to happen to you too. And I mean no disrespect or insensitivity to all the other emotional and other things that go into why people do something like that. Sometimes it may look to you that the people don't care, but in actuality they probably care a lot in some things, and to you it just seems like they're not caring. But sometimes when they're not doing something, there's deeper rooted things that are going on that you just don't even know about until they unpack it with you, or you may not be that person, and they do it with somebody else, and they realize sometimes they're almost frozen to do something because they don't know how to work through something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, like Brian brought up, like people, you think they might not care, but they probably do care a lot, and they care in a way that they've gotten to the point, for example, like the environment or politics or education, where the problem seems too big. And so the apathy towards it's kind of, hip and cool, kind of to be this person, just to be like, well, I can't change anything. I'm only one person.
But one person can change a lot of different things, because change really starts with the individual. And so, it's easy to say, y'all people need to y'all change what you do.
Yeah.
It's easy to point the finger at somebody else. It's like, yeah, there's actually a personal responsibility that has to happen there with it. With that, there is something where you can't passively do good. It's possible to passively not do evil. You could sit on the couch and chill and eat potato chips all day, and that's like not evil.
Nothing evil about that.
But
or
the silver exactly. The silver rule says, like, don't do unto others that you don't want done to you, but that's not an active thing. The golden rule says, do unto others as you want done to you. That's actually like you are actively engaged in the process.
Right. It relies on the individual to change.
Yeah. To be empathetic to somebody actually requires activity, an active stance. Apathy is when you're passive about something sometimes. Sometimes you maybe choose not to care. But a lot of times when you see areas of apathy, it's because you've just been passive about something, And it's something to pay attention to. Obviously not everything is equally important, but those are good things to look at to go, have I actively shown somebody empathy today, or have I done that? A great example is with my wife. One of her, one of ways she really is affirmed in our relationship is words of affirmation, and do that, you know. And for me, those are important to me too. But like, if I say something and I haven't changed my mind since the last time,
you just don't feel like, to say it again. Right.
I'm like, it's assumed the same thing. It's like, she said, like, you know, you haven't told me I'm beautiful today. I'm like, well, I told you yesterday. She goes, well, I need to hear it today. I'm like, well, I haven't changed my opinion since yesterday.
Right.
But, you know, those things just show active that we're caring.
Yeah, and I think Brian brings up a good point too, that individuals have different, you know, like thresholds for this, and like what do they expect, and what is, you know, it's something that you should actively be thinking about when you're talking to people. If they're apathetic towards something, like, why are they apathetic towards something? And why don't they have empathy for, you know, maybe your point of view or somebody else's point of view?
Another thing to note about when you start to actively engage is that you may act or do things or be required to do something that's against what you just naturally do. And in my marriage, I do a lot of things that aren't natural to me, like just like wired by default. Like, it takes an active choice to be able to go do something. And that's one of the marvels about human beings, that you can actually go against your instinct or go against nature to be able to change who you are or what you're doing. And in order to really do that, sometimes it requires you, like, well, it's not natural for me to repeat myself and reaffirm that again and again, but that's what's needed for the other person. And so when you actually move into a place where you're not apathetic anymore and you're actively empathetic, it's going to require learning some new skills. Now, it's always a good thing to do, but we don't just do that naturally, right, Josh? I mean,
no.
It's something like...
I mean, I don't think I do. I mean, I think a lot of people don't naturally do that. Or you might empathize with certain things, but you don't naturally want to really change who you are, because people are creatures of habit. Habits are, first of all, they're hard to break. I mean, just talk about anybody who smokes, and those are addictions as well, but they're also habits, because once you break that addiction, you still have that psychological point of it, you know? And I think that a lot of people in general, they don't want to change, especially as we get older. Like, I've noticed the one thing about me as I get older, you know, I play video games a lot, but I always find myself going back to the video games that I played before, or that I wanted to do. It's hard for me sometimes to say, oh, I got this new game to play, or I've got this new experience I want to do, because I think it is a risk reward, and it's also I know what I'm getting type thing. So it's me doing what is comfortable to me. And I think as people get older, and even as you just get more set in whatever you're doing, it's just easier to just keep going down that road.
Yeah, and it's easier to not consider
another point of view. Yeah, exactly. Another
Yeah.
perspective, another point of view.
What I've seen too is that, especially when there is a power dynamic that happens, whether you're a leader or, you know, something like that, or you're a public figure or a celebrity that has a voice just because of your specific platform, it doesn't mean that what you have to say is unimportant because you don't have that. It's just by the nature of
you got a million followers on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah,
you know,
your voice is going to be bigger in people's ears just because of that. And for those folks, you know, if they really truly are making the effort, it's almost like you have to try twice as hard to be perceived as trying as hard as somebody who doesn't have that. Because part of it is because it's harder sometimes, I think, when you're in a power position to be empathetic, but you also have the biggest opportunity because you may have more resources or more wherewithal to be able to understand and be able to help people in that capacity. It's really easy, though, to vilify somebody, say like, oh, they didn't care because they're different than me, you know, or they're in a position of authority. They can't understand. But they can understand where they are coming from. And if they're actually trying to do it, I think it's always good that we acknowledge when people are actually putting effort forward.
Yeah, I think that is... Actually, I think that's a really awesome place to maybe put a comma in the conversation, huh, Brian?
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's remind ourselves again of the golden rule. Do unto others as you want done unto you. That's active, which means that you can't be apathetic. It means that you have to actively engage and be empathetic, and also learn how to communicate your empathy to somebody else in a way that's meaningful to them, not just meaningful to you. Until next time, this is Brian.
And this is Josh.
For Curiosity Continuum.